But, it took a couple of meetings. So I'm just backtrack. Like several weeks ago, I started on Melungeons. For those who don't know Melungeons, Abraham Lincoln, he said he's descendant of the Melungeons. And now when you do trace back the history of Melungeons, they from like the Appalachian Mountains, like Kentucky, Tennessee, even parts of Virginia. And a lot of people from the Appalachian Mountains, they say that somehow connected to the Moors. Either they came from Spain or they came from Portugal. Some of them say that we Portuguese, we descended of Portuguese. Some would say that we from Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina. And then we did the research and found out there was an English pirate by the name of Sir Francis. I can't remember his last name right now. He dropped off some Moors over there off the coast, and they made their way over there to the Appalachian Mountains. Drake, that's right, Sir Francis Drake. And now, of course, from these, and matter of fact, even in 1784, there was a brother who went up in there because he tried to make a state out of that part of Tennessee now. But he went up in there, he said, yo, up in the mountains, there was people up there, he described them, like, yo, they're dark-skinned, tall, dark-skinned people. And they was like, they said, no, we descendants of the Moors. And the reason I went into that, because this is where Abraham Lincoln descended from. And one of the things I finished up with is a description of what the average Melungeons would look like. And you see, it completely describes Abraham Lincoln. That's why his high cheekbones, the color of his eyes, his hair, which is coarse, it fits right in with the Melungeons. Oh, okay. So he fits right into the description. Oh yeah, I hear myself better. He fits right into the descriptions. So of course now the reason I went into that, because now of course Abraham Lincoln, he signed the 13th Amendment, which of course frees slavery. So now I went into like, what does he, because he had some type of tie back to these people, or was it just a political thing? And then last week I went into some more of what was going on around that time that led up to it. Because a lot of things, like with him freeing the so-called slaves and uniting, it wasn't something that was new. It was on the books, like from like 1700s they was trying to do this, but the House of Congress was not passing it. So hold on, I'm trying to get myself together here. So I just want to go back a little bit more before what was going on before the 13th Amendment with 20 sections was signed. Because if you look on the books right now, you see the 13th Amendment with 2 sections. It's really 20 sections that was signed off in 1865.
It's long.
And it was ratified December 18th, 1865 by 3/4 of the states. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But of course, like I said, even what was going on in the country, like I said, even though President Abraham Lincoln, he freed the slaves, but it was something that was going on before, because obviously we was trying to get free. We was having rebellions. Bless. But just go back real quick. Even in 1857, we all heard about the Dred Scott case. That was a brother, he went into the free territories up in the Northwest, above Ohio. When you look at the language of the, matter of fact, real quick, you get the language of the 13th Amendment with 2 sections, and the ordinance of 1787. Oh, you got that? We'll get it first. Because even though the language of the 13th Amendment with 2 sections, it goes back to the 1787 of Northwest Ordinance. But anyway, well, until they get that. Dred Scott, he went into this land. He was a slave, so he went into this free territory. You got it? He went into this free territory. So in his mind, thinking like, I'm in free territory now, so I should be free. But of course, he had to go to courts, and the people said, no, you're not free. You're still a slave. And we're gonna go into why he was still considered a slave.
Islam. Amendment. Islam. Amendment 13, slavery abolished. Passed by Congress January 31st, 1865, ratified December 6, 1865. Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Islam?
Islam.
You got the North? You got the Northwest Ordinance? Okay. Now this is the Northwest Ordinance. You can read out what year that came out.
It's the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, Article 6. There shall be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude in the said territory, otherwise than in the punishment of crimes whereof the part shall have been duly convicted. Islam.
So right there, I just had to read that to give you an understanding of how the similar language, even though the 13th Amendment with 2 sections came out in 1865, what he just read came out in the 1700s. Get myself together. Now, I just want to go over real quick why he was still considered a slave, even though he went to the free territory. Because the Chief Justice Taney, the one who finally ruled on his case, after the case, he gave his opinion of why he ruled the way that he did. And I just want to go over a few things. Here you go.
A free Negro of the African race whose ancestors were brought to this country and sold as slaves is not a citizen within the meaning of the Constitution of the United States.
Now, right there, the main thing I want you to understand right there, how it said it called him a Negro. Go on to, let me see. In fact, we can skip because I don't want to spend too long on this next page.
The plaintiff having admitted by his demurrer to the plea in abatement that his ancestors were imported from Africa and sold as slaves, he is not a citizen of the slate of Missouri according to the Constitution of the United States and was not entitled to sue in that character in the circuit court.
Right there, we say he could not sue by that. The reason why he couldn't sue, because he went into court calling himself as a Negro. He went in there and said, like, yo, I'm a Negro. So now if you call yourself a Negro, you're not going to get no respect in the eyes of the law. That's why even if you remember, we went through our one-on-ones, can a man be a black, colored Negro? No, he can't. That's why we don't call ourselves that. That's why we don't call ourselves black. I know, even before I came to the temple, I was kind of shocked. Like, what? You mean I ain't black? You know, grew up black power and all this and that, but no, we know you recognize you are classified as black, you get no respect in the eyes of the law. So that was about the Dred Scott case. Let's fast forward a little bit. Now, of course, just breezing through this a little bit. Now, of course, in 1854, Kansas-Nebraska Act, it was a national policy concerning the expansion of slavery into the territories, affirming the concept of popular sovereignty. In 1820, the Missouri Compromise excluded slavery from that part of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Pretty much what it's saying, whenever the states, you know, remember in the history class, when they were trying to move west, every time a new state popped up, the big thing was like, if this is going to be a slave state or not. Because slave was the drug money back then. That was the oil of that day, that was the cocaine of that day, whatever. If you can get that slave going, you was gonna make money.
Islam.
So that's why every time it's a new state, it's like, yo, it was going to war, battles, or what was going on with that. Now, of course, that was in 1854. Of course, in 1860, Abraham, he got elected. As soon as he got elected, October election in 1860, Lincoln won with 180 electoral votes. And right after he got elected, that's when the South was like, because they understand what he was pushing, because he was always on some, he played a politician role, whatever, but even when he was running, I don't have that picture handy. Even when he was running, like, you know how they try to put down the candidate that's running, whatever, they had a picture of Abraham, drew a caricature. He was dressed in Moorish garb. He was had a scimitar. He had like a cloth talking about that he was about to wrap up a turban. Right there, by trying to demean him, talking about, yo, he's one of the Moorish. He's of Moorish descent. Again, when you go into the description, you see his woolly hair and his high cheekbones, how it fits right in with the Melungeons. And a lot of them, Melungeons said, "Yeah, we descendants of the Moors."
Islam.
So now, of course, soon as he takes in 1860, of course, the war almost starts off immediately. The southern states, they start like, you know what, we out of here. Mississippi in 1861, Georgia 1861, Texas, Florida, Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee. Pretty much as soon as you get in between the next couple of months, they all like, yo, bro, well, that's the president? Yeah, we out, man. We ain't dealing with that. We can make our own money right there. Because like I said, at that time, the cotton, that was the real money right there, because that was an international thing.
That's right, Mazda.
Let me see. I don't want to bore y'all with all this, so now we're going to go into the, oh, you looking for that picture? Yeah, it's in there. But you find it. Huh? Islam.
Verse horizon with more praise than John, prophets. Can you break down, I guess, real quick, the connection between Chief Justice Taney, Dred Scott, and the Amistad case?
Islam. Appreciate it. That's right. Good thing. I'm glad you brought that up. Chief Justice Taney. Now you see how with Dred Scott in 1857, he said that you're a Negro. As long as you consider yourself a Negro, you get no respect in the eyes of the law. I don't know if you remember or read that book, Amistad. If you remember that movie, if you ever get a chance to go back and look at it, those was so-called slaves. They was caught off the coast of Long Island because they was kidnapped. And somebody was trying to take them into slavery. They came off, got off at the Long Island, but then they case would end up taking them to, I think it was Boston, up in that area, to be tried. And long story short, now mind you, when the reason they took these Moors, they took over the boat, they killed the European that was on it, and they hijacked the boat. So right now, in today's remember to hold the mic. That's why in today's understanding, brother, that's like you and I. We get on a plane, we kill the pilots, Europeans, and we hijack the plane and we go somewhere else. We land, we get caught, we go to trial, let them go free. The reason he brought that up, because it was the same judge on that case who let them go free. The reason why, and again, if you watch the movie or read the book, there was the main guy, Sin Bey, because he had that Bey on his name. He was even drawing in the sand, trying to let them know, like, yo, I'm not from here. I'm from over there. So even though he knew and understand, like, don't classify me as this Negro, black, colored, and all this and that. Okay, you know, he'd have been up a creek right there. So that's why it's a good point. I'm glad he brought that up. Oh yeah, let them know.
If I could just add in.
Yeah, please do it.
I think why the Moore brought it up is a correlation between the two cases. In one case, you have the Moore who's referred to as Negro, black, and color, called Dred Scott. He tries to sue in court for his freedom, and he gets denied on the basis that he wasn't a citizen, et cetera, et cetera. Now, during that same time period of the Dred Scott case, you had the case known as the Amistad case, where there was a mutiny on the boat. They were forced into bondage in the same way that Dred Scott's ancestors presumably were. However, after they killed Europeans on the boat and they landed in America, even though they weren't citizens, they were treaties, and their nationality is what governed their political situation. And so they were set free on the basis that they were forced into servitude, although they were of a free nation with treaty relations with the United States of America. And slavery was prohibited, the importation of slaves was prohibited according to the Constitution in the year 1808. So the point of bringing those two cases is political status. Dred Scott, being Negro, black, and colored, absent of political status, couldn't even sue in court, didn't even have the capacity in court. And then in the Amistad case, these individuals actually killed people and were set free because they were held against their will, to the same way that Dred Scott was. However, they had political status, Dred Scott didn't.
Appreciate it. So now I was just laying the basis on kind of what was going on. So now, of course, we go into the initial, matter of fact, let me ask you real quick. Of course, you know, we heard about the initial Emancipation Proclamation. Have you read it? Trust me, I didn't read it till I came in here.
I haven't read it, but I know what it is.
You know what it is? All right, you know what it's for.
It was supposed to free the slaves.
Okay, that's good. That's what. That's four. I'll run it down real quick. It was initial Emancipation Proclamation, September 22nd, 1862. That's the one people know about. But that's why I like to ask people, like, but did you read it? You're gonna read it in a minute. There was Emancipation Proclamation, December 1st, 1862. The Supplemental Emancipation Proclamation, January 1865. And the Oath, the Amnesty and Reconstruction, December 8th, 1863. And of course, right after that, the 13th Amendment with 20 sections came out. But the initial emancipation, the first one we're just going to read off, we're going to read some of it. This is just part of the initial emancipation, September 22nd, 1862.
September 22nd, 1862, Initial Emancipation Proclamation. I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States of America, and Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy thereof, do hereby proclaim and declare that hereafter, as heretofore, the war will be prosecuted for the object of practically restoring the constitutional relation between the United States and each of the states and the people thereof, in which...
Just real quick, what you talking about right there, because you know there was civil war. The South, they tried to break off. His main goal was to preserve the Union by any means necessary. As a president, that's his job, to keep the United States of America together. So that's why his main goal was to keep the Union together.
Yeah. Constitutional relation between the United States and each of the states and the people thereof, in which states that relation is or may be suspended or disturbed. That it is my purpose upon the next meeting of Congress to again recommend the adoption of a practical measure tendering pecuniary aid to the free acceptance or rejection of all slave states.
Okay, that was a part. Right there, we said pecuniary, we're going to go into that because that's part of the 13th Amendment with 20 section. But I want you to just get to the good part. I don't want to bore you. Just skip to the third paragraph. This is the third paragraph. This is the part we never learned in school. Go ahead.
That on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then thenceforward and forever free.
Forever free.
And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no acts to repress such persons, or any of them in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom.
Did you get that? 1862, he said that not only are these people free, but the executive branch, the Navy, pretty much the military is supposed to protect us. It's on the books, it's written. But imagine as a little child, we'd have been taught that, but of course they didn't teach us that. And of course they ain't supposed to do anything to stop them from, what's this act? I don't want to mess it up. Will do any act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts that make for their freedom, actual freedom. So it means you gotta make an effort. You can't just sit on your behind and just wait for something to come to you. So that's why we do things like whatever, get our status corrected. They're not supposed to stop us. It's going back to 1862. That's why, like I said, we spoke before about the status, how the way dress code was classified. He was classified as a Negro. You know, in our teaching, we talking about the one-on-ones, Negro, black, color. We don't do none of that. And of course, we all have L's and B's attached to our names, whatever. They can't stop us. This is all steps to our freedom. Islam.
First I rise to my highest height, giving proper praise to Father God Allah. I give honors to all prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Confucius, and the prophets of these last days and time. My prophet, Noble Drew Ali. My name is Aram Giddy L. I greet y'all with peace.
Peace.
So in that initial proclamation, did that apply to the slave states that were not in rebellion, or just the slave states that were in rebellion?
Those are rebellion.
Islam.
We can fast forward. We're going to go to the next one, Compensated Emancipation Proclamation, December 1st. Matter of fact, the top of page 71. Just go to the first paragraph. So now right here, now this part, like I said, when you get a chance to go through it, but this part right here, he's laying out a plan on how to free the slaves. Because of course you can't just do it overnight. Because if you do it today, then it's going to just be chaos tomorrow. So he had to do a gradual plan. And one of the things I brought up before, especially as him being a lawyer, one of the things the lawyer has to do is look at history. Because England did it in 1833 to try to free everybody. And of course it was chaos, but just like, yo, you could stay on and work for the so-called masses for a little bit, but there was total chaos. And then the government had to end up paying out like 28 million pounds back then in 1838. You can only imagine what that is today. So of course, Abraham, he see this, is like, oh no, we're not gonna do that overnight. He laid out a little plan.
Compensated Emancipation Proclamation, December 1st, 1862. The plan leaves to each state choosing to act under it to abolish slavery now or at the end of the century or at any intermediate time or by degrees extending over the whole or any part of the period, and it obliges no two states to proceed alike. It also provides for compensation and generally the mode of making it. This, it would seem, must further mitigate the dissatisfaction of those who favor perpetual slavery, and especially, or those who are to receive compensation. Doubtless some of those who are to pay and not to receive will object, yet the measure is both just and economical.
So right there, I don't know if you caught it. He said this happened this is 1862. He gave it to the end of the century, to the 1900, to slowly, gradually pay these people off. Because we're going to get into a little bit further, because it's in the 13th Amendment with 20 sections, how they're supposed to get paid. 13th, section 17, we're going to get to.
Who's supposed to get paid?
The slaveholders and those who was held as slaves. Go to page 73. And also part of the conversation, whatever, they also talk about colonizing. So you're supposed to colonize people. Not just colonize them here, you could have them, give them money so they can set up shop somewhere. Go to, what's it, this third article.
The third article related to the future of the free people. It does not oblige, but merely authorizes Congress to aid in colonizing such as may consent. This ought not to be regarded as objectionable on the one hand or on the other, insomuch as it comes to nothing, unless by the mutual consent of the people to be deported and the American voters through their representative in Congress.
So now, I'll just give you a quick rundown of some of what was going on. Of course, there's two other proclamations. But now I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because of course now, matter of fact, you go to, real quick, a divine warning by the prophet. I got to outline what I want. Start with that. So now, fast forward, when they talk about this is the 13th Amendment with 20 sections. As we know, there's a 14th Amendment on the books. Once we get a chance, time will come, we're going to go to the 13th Amendment with 20 sections. And part of it, one of the amendments, one of the sections, it said that we're supposed to vote. That gave us the right to vote. It gave us the right to peaceably assemble, the right to follow our religion. But of course, you came out with the 14th Amendment. Because now people say, how are you a citizen? They'd be like, oh, the 14th Amendment. But the 14th Amendment, it was actually, Supreme Court said it's no good. It's not even supposed to be there.
Jeez.
And the reason it's not supposed to be there because Fifth Amendment, it says that, when you take a person's property, you're supposed to pay them. As so-called slaves, we was considered property. So when the Union said, when the war was over, it's like, yo, we're taking your property, you're supposed to get paid. Again, in the 13th Amendment with 20 sections, everybody's supposed to get paid like almost $100 for their property. 14th Amendment comes out, and the reason it was unconstitutional because you can't contradict what was already in the Constitution. At the bottom of it, it says that all debts that the U.S. ain't not gonna pay, excuse me, I'm paraphrasing. So now pretty much in the South, now if you own slaves, now you say you own a business and you let all your workers go, but the government's like, nah, we're gonna pay for all the workers. Now all of a sudden, it's like 3 years, 1865, 1868, where's my money? I let all these people go, I'm losing money. You say you don't give me money, what's good, what's happening? 1868, they come out the 14th Amendment, and at the bottom of it, we're not paying no debts prior to that. But now here's what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali says. Now you can start off with here.
The 14th and 15th Amendments brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners who were at that time without power with the constitutional body of power. And at that time, 1865, the free national constitutional law that was enforced since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendments for the salvation of our people and citizens.
So that's what the Prophet said. So now that's why even if you go into our laws, where how we read in 1777, these names given to us by slaveholders and last until 1865. That's in our laws. So even though once you read that, the first thing that's come to your mind is, yo, I gotta study that time period to see what's going on. And one of the things you're gonna come across, well, once you do some research and come down to the temple, because we definitely have a lot of answers. You find out about the 13th Amendment 20 section, and the 14th Amendment was null and void. It's not even supposed to be on the books.
It's long.
But of course, I want to do it another time. I wanted to go in exactly why the 14th Amendment and what states was going against it and who was with it, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to say that for another time. So I'm going to end up with that because I don't want to go into that. That's going to take a minute. So I'm going to say that for the next time. So for right now, I say Islam and peace. Right now,